Hi, and welcome to Wealthy Woman Lawyer. I am here today with my guest, Thomas Hamilton of Ross Intelligence. Hi, Thomas. Good to see you. To see you. You and I have already recorded a podcast together, and we did all that without seeing each other. So it's nice to finally put a face with a name there. I'm Davina Frederick, and this is the Wealthy Woman Lawyer YouTube channel. And we help women law firm owners to grow practices that help them create personal wealth and influence and expand their impact in the world. So I'm excited to have Thomas here today because he's going to talk with us about a really cool product called Ross Intelligence, and I think it's new in the game of legal research, and so a lot of people need to know about it, know they're out there doing this. So why don't you give us a little bit of, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you came. I know you shared the story on the podcast, but if you give us a little version of yourself and how you came to work with Ross Intelligence.
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so the short form version of the longer story, but you're gonna whack me across the screen share if I drone on too long about it, I'm sure. The short form version is I'm an attorney. Did a sort of typical attorney career path. I did my undergrad, the minor in the classics, so poli-sci, history, philosophy, and then also with a focus on business as well. And then I went straight to law school afterwards. I got a job with a large law firm that actually, by the time I left, it was the world's largest law firm. I think it still is, Fenton's. Wow. And while I was there, it was an interesting time because the firm was going through these mergers, and each merger, you're all of a sudden you have offices in a country you didn't even have an office in, the week before. So there was a lot of time and energy spent by management on looking at the tools and specifically the software that the firm used and that lawyers used, but also the paralegals, legal assistants, really anyone at the firm, to try and find ways to be a bit more efficient. And in some ways to avoid a lot of redundancy, because when you're growing that fast, you have a lot of people doing the same job and you need to find a way to get them all to work together.
Right.
So in that world, I was thinking a lot more, I think, about technology than a lot of my peers were when we were all starting our legal careers. And one of the things that really impacted my day-to-day was legal research. So I was gearing more towards a transactional sort of career. Corp was really where I was focused, but I still do legal research. I wasn't really a specialist in it, but whenever I would get a mandate from a client directly or from a partner, it would kind of just derail everything else I was doing, Mm-hmm. And the challenge was I had to do a good job on it, but under a tight time frame, and often we couldn't always bill the client. And even if we did, the client might just sort of write it down. So in that world of really experiencing a lot of kind of the pain points of legal research from a business point of view, but also as a practitioner, and wishing, geez, I wish I had more time to do this. But I also wish I had tools that were a bit more accurate. In sort of that headspace, some of my peers that hadn't gone to law school, but that were computer scientists, were starting companies. And there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in artificial intelligence. I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but spoiler. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in artificial intelligence, some of which really applied very nicely and kind of seamlessly to law, and especially to legal research. So I tested actually a very early version of our software way back when, and kind of right away the lights went on in my head. And from there, I stayed interested in the company. I brought them in as a client to my firm, and then eventually left to help sort of, create the company and build it up. And that's what I'm doing on the call now. Is a part of my job, definitely the most enjoyable part of my job, is sort of spreading the word, talking to folks that run their own law firms, that are interested in technology, that are sort of new to the space in terms of artificial intelligence. And talking about AI and what does it mean? B, talking about how do folks already use this technology, because we're already used by thousands of attorneys across the country. But C, kind of showing the technology, but answering questions on what does it do and how does it, in a very real way, help improve your practice and your profitability and also your work-life balance and help you make your clients happier as well.
Right, right. So you've got a lot there that we're going to unpack in a few minutes, but I want to start out with talking about artificial intelligence, and because this is what really is a differentiator for you guys compared to other types of research tools that are out there. This is an area you're sort of pioneering for the legal industry. So tell us a little bit about why the artificial intelligence is making for a better product for the future, or moving us into something else, or is it? I'm assuming you're
Yeah,
going to say it
yeah,
is.
sure thing. It is. Well, it'd be awkward if I said it isn't, right? I
Right.
think it would be a very short interview.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it it is, and don't just take our word for it. There's incredible advances happening, not just in legal, but across every industry when it comes to artificial intelligence. And in fact, one of the very exciting things about AI being artificial intelligence here, one of the most exciting things about AI is also one of the most kind of confusing to a layperson. And it was something that I had to really become accustomed to because I didn't come from a strict tech background myself. So artificial intelligence, the running definition is basically software that can perform a task we thought only a human could do. And the reason that's confusing is in 2020, what we think of as a task only a human could do is totally different from even in 2005, right? So the classic example is Siri, right? The AI assistant on your iPhone, or the many other examples like Amazon Alexa, for instance. Hopefully I didn't just trigger my Alexa in my office. In 2005, that would have been seen as science fiction, right? The idea that you can talk to something, sort of issue verbal cues and commands and have that thing perform functions, that was seen as only something a human could do, or on a very simple level, maybe your pet, right? On a very, very simple level. But now it's totally normal. We can talk to our phones. So it's an example of how AI always, evolves. And that's definitely true in legal, but like I said, in other industries as well. With legal, what's really exciting about it and what made me really, cue into this stuff was there's a lot of work that we do as attorneys that is very important and that we have to do basically perfectly every single time, but that is very time intensive, does not necessarily create revenue for our firm, or maybe it creates revenue, but not a ton of it. So it's not very profitable for us. And often those tasks we're actually not very good at. Now, as someone that went to law school, as someone that wrote the LSAT, as someone that passed the bar, we're better than the average person. We might even be in the top 99 percentile of adults for the ability to read contracts and spot typos, spot terms of art that are out of place, things like that. But we still make mistakes, right? Repetitive work is very difficult to do, even for very, very intelligent, educated people. AI is incredible at repetitive tasks that are very detail oriented. So for us, the kind of the double whammy, if you will, was A, AI is great at repetitive tasks, detail oriented. B, AI is really good at understanding language if you can, within a specific domain, if you can give it a lot of examples. And case law is sort of a perfect situation where you have millions and millions of pages of law. It's all written in very grammatically correct fashion. It's all nicely uniform, generally speaking. It's page numbers, right? Correct indentation. But the devil's always in the details of legal research. And so you might be trying to phrase a question in one way, but that question is answered perfectly by a judge just using different words. And historically, the systems that we all use that were based on Boolean search, like myself included, are really bad at that because they're looking to brute force match the words you type in with words judges have said in case law. The difference for us is we invested a lot of time and energy up front and hired a lot of really, really smart engineers to create a system that understands your question, even though it may return answers that are not the exact same words. And in law, that can make a huge, huge difference. So we'll see examples of what that looks like in person. It's always better to show, than to tell, like we were joking about before. But really that was the sweet spot. As we started as an AI company, we implemented a lot of really cutting edge breakthroughs that only came out a few years ago, which is right when we were being created. What that's allowed us to do is create from the ground up an AI search tool that really outperforms anything else on the market.
Oh, wow. Wow. So that's fantastic. Well, I want to get into you showing that to us. Uh, but before we do, I just want to kind of touch on this. Is it a replacement for Westlaw and Lexis, Fastcase, or is this something that is usually additional to, or what have you found to be the experiences of attorneys in the, in the marketplace that have used the product? What do they have to say about it?
Okay, so my lawyer answer is it depends, and it depends on your practice. What we find is that attorneys, especially at smaller firms that do have a subscription to one of the more traditional tools, they often, once they start using Ross, will totally unplug that other tool, because it's A, much more affordable, B, much more performant and much easier to use. So it happens very, very regularly that we're told that occurs. Typically, how we explain it works and how you should first use it is think of it as a complement. So the other tools like a Westlaw, Lexis, Bloomberg, Fastcase, what they do a great job of is sourcing information by practitioners and experts around the law. So things like secondary sources, right? Like Collier's on bankruptcy, stuff like that. They have access to great repositories of information, as well as guides, things like forms. That stuff's really helpful, but what makes it essential to use is that the core search is sometimes not going to bring you great results. So we've all had the situation where you're on something like Westlaw, Lexis, and you spend 4 or 5 hours doing Boolean searches and you're still not finding things that are on point. With Ross, what you'll see is when you jump in and you ask more complicated questions, you're going to find very, very on-point answers immediately. And we actually encourage people to trial it, because it's free to trial. I'll show you how to sign up in a minute here, but it's very easy to sign up. You don't have to put in a credit card or anything. And then literally just use it side by side. And the impetus of where we thought of that is the way that we were trained when we were starting as attorneys. So when I was starting at my firm, we had a subscription with Westlaw and Lexis. And the way that we were taught by the head librarian was, listen, you're going to find one of the two tools you prefer, but don't make your judgment too fast. You're just getting started here. Use both and see how the results differ and see what makes sense for you. And so I would encourage people, if you already do have a paid subscription to another tool, sign up for ours. It's totally free to trial, and just spend 30 seconds, 60 seconds on our tool and compare that to what you get in 60 seconds on what you were using before, and you'll immediately see the difference.
Right. And the other products, maybe, if you're looking for secondary sources and forms and things of that nature, it may be something you decide to keep that and have this as a complement. But if you get those other things from other places, this may be something that, works out better for you.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't use the secondary sources and the forms, that kind of thing as much, then often what we hear is within the first month of someone subscribing to our service, they'll cancel their other subscription.
Yeah, it's powerful. All right, so let's see this thing. Let's see it. See this baby.
So let me share my screen here. You're going to see my really messy desktop for a second, but I quickly switched to the other screen. Okay, can you see my screen right now?
Yeah, this is, there it is.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to move some of the Zoom stuff. Like when you're on a Zoom call and then the video bubble is right over the thing you're trying to actually click on.
Yeah, and I'm actually moving yours so that you're in front of me instead of me looking off to the side there. So.
Yeah, I'm going to put you in the top left. Okay, so what I've done is I have just opened up our web page. Let's go really back to basics. I'm just going to search for, let's go to Google. I'm going to open the Google search engine. I'm just going to type in the name of our company. There we go. First hit. Okay. So I've come in. All you have to do is click on sign up. Now, when you sign up, you don't have to fully create an account. You can jump in and try the search right off the bat. Like I said, we want to make this really, really, really easy to try. So you're able to do a certain number of searches without even creating an account. After that, though, this is how simple the sign up is. So I just want to show it quickly just so everyone believes me. So it's literally just name, email address, phone number. We love to hear how you heard about us. You don't have to actually tell us, but it helps us understand, right? So I was listening to the Wealthy Woman Lawyer podcast, whatever. I was at a conference, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you jump in. So for me, I already have an account. Let me just go ahead and log in here. Okay, great. So everything is built around this core search bar. The idea here, and it's really part of the design for AI systems, is no matter how powerful the system becomes, you want it to be very easy for a user to use it and understand what it's doing. We'll talk about that a few times. So you can really do all the standard stuff you're used to doing in here. You don't have to change your research style to start. So let's give a few examples. Let's say I want to search by case name. I'm going to do Hamilton v. Hamilton, my last name. Here we go. Got a whole bunch of cases. Looks like we got 818 right off the bat. Obviously, you could specify it more, right? Hamilton v. Hamilton, 1983, Appellate Court of Florida, da 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 da. You can do the classics, just searching by keywords. We've all done it, right? So I'm just going to type in dog bite. Here we go.
Here you go, dog
1,500 plus results, right? And so this is very inaccurate, but that doesn't mean it doesn't help, right? If you don't know anything about the law with respect to dog bites, this is actually a really good way to start your research. We don't want to discourage you from doing it. And similarly, you can always do Boolean too. So dog bite and landlord, same paragraph as tenant, right? So it's a Boolean term.
Right.
You do all the standard stuff. If you need guides, we include it because we know. So when I was practicing, I'd printed out a sheet of paper and I would thumbtack it to like the side of my office, to remind yourself all these Boolean connectors. You can do all that stuff.
Right. I think that's the difference in people who can use like Google better than others. Some of the things that people return.
Exactly. And the thing is, what we know is getting comfortable with these terms can take years, right? So if you go to a senior research librarian, like they can put together these beautiful strings of Boolean research, but it's almost like writing code, right? And most of us aren't familiar with it. We weren't really taught how to do it well in law school, and it's a bit frustrating. So now let's get to the fun stuff here. I'm going to type in a question. Let's say, what is standard for false by necessary implication advertising in New York since 2010? All right, so this immediately looks different, right? I'm typing in the full question, just like I'm speaking to another attorney, or maybe I've hired a research intern, or I have a student summary for me. And this could literally be a question that a client emailed to you, right?
Right.
And you're also going to notice that at the end of the sentence, there's a few things going on. So let me zoom in here a little bit. Okay, so in New York is underlined, and then since 2010 is underlined as well. So this is something called named entity recognition in AI jargon. Basically what it means though is the AI system, remember I said as it becomes more powerful, it's more and more important to let the user know what it's doing. So what's going on here is it's saying, I understand you've asked me a complicated question with the law, but you've also added these parameters. Now the parameters aren't actually part of like the question, but they're part of what's going to filter how I'm going to return the results. So I'm only going to bring stuff back from New York and since 2010. Is that okay? And then if you don't like that, you can change it. Now I'm going to go ahead and search. And then the basic interface is barely going to change. And that's very much on purpose. What is going to change is now we're getting way less results. So looks like there's 100 results. You're seeing these little bubbles here. So these are all the filters that are being applied. You want to open those, you can come in here. You can get really specific in all the filters with courts and everything.
Right.
Because we know that we're sort of all used to doing that manually, right? But what we are encouraging people to do is just type it in. And then that's why we have the trials, just ask questions a few times and see how powerful the results are. So what you're going to see on my screen is passages from cases. It's ordering the list in the order that it finds the cases to be most on point. So you don't have to actually open the case to see the answers. And I'll give you an example. Let's look at this first case. So Church v. Dwight, right? Says there's one of 3 passages. Now you can actually just carousel through them. You don't even have to open the case.
Oh, nice.
And you're going to see that, so these passages answer your question, and this is where I always I do like the polite Canadian thing, and I apologize for saying something really obvious, but to say something really obvious here, the question we've asked is one sentence, and it's maybe 15 words, right? This passage is an entire paragraph of judge-written language, and the only words that directly match have been put in bold. So there's 5 words that match. So on a Boolean search, like Westlaw Lexis, this would literally never happen. It is impossible for this to occur because those searches are just brute force matching the words you typed in. But the problem is when you rely on one of those old-fashioned systems, you don't get these full passages that are returned.
Well,
So
because you have
a
judge who's sitting there carefully crafting and picking words and writing, and then you have you sitting there with your brain going, okay, what do I need to type? What's the best way for me to ask this question? And we're going to use more natural language probably. So yeah, makes sense.
Exactly. And so you're almost trying to second guess in your mind, well, what are the exact adjectives and nouns and verbs the judge used? And the problem is judges, I mean, they have to communicate so much that their writing kind of rambles a little bit, right? Like it's rare that your question that's one sentence is perfectly answered with one sentence. It happens sometimes, but a lot of the time it doesn't. So that's another example of really the power.
Well, they have to give they're attorneys. They've got to give that level of detail and clarity. Let me be real clear and explain everything and every term in the sentence I just said so that you understand what I'm saying. And still people misinterpret.
All the time. Whether on purpose or not, they misinterpret it all the time. Exactly.
Right.
So what I'll do now is let's get even more granular. So you're able to do things like search for cases based on certain motions they're discussing, certain facts, and certain exclusions as well. So the idea here, when A, think what we just saw, and then B, what I'm going to show you, is we want to take you from legal research that takes 6 hours to do, just to find a few cases that then you have to read start to finish to kind of understand the law, to now it's like you have basically an AI research assistant that's in your office at all times. You can give them the question very fast, and within 30 seconds, they're returning cases with the right passages highlighted for you to totally review. So it's not completely replacing you in legal research, and we never want to do that because you always need an attorney to use this stuff, but it's getting you like that nice pile of double-spaced, duplicate, highlighted, tabbed up cases on your desk at 9 in the morning, but it's getting it to you in 30 seconds. So let's get more specific. Let's say motion for summary judgment. Yeah, exactly. For facts, intentional deception, and for exclusions, let's say labels. That's just some intellectual property geek legal research stuff there. And then once again, the interface is not really going to change that much, but the results that come back will. So once again, it's ordering cases in the order it finds the most helpful. It's showing you the number of results. So here it says 50 results.
Yeah, we've gone down to 50.
And we can, exactly. So you keep winnowing it down, right? And then you're able to carousel through. But let's actually open the case this time. And we'll give it a second to load on the Zoom screen. Perfect. Okay, so remember I was saying what we're sort of moving you from is that old-fashioned, like just pecking away for 6 hours to 30 seconds later, you have good stuff. So it actually almost looks like someone had printed this case out for you. So the right-hand side of my screen, this is the case. You can do all the stuff you'd expect. So you can print, you can save, generate a Blue Book citation, what else? You can email it to yourself or to other people, whatever you want. You can read through it. All the cases are hyperlinked, of course. And you're seeing passages highlighted, right?
Right.
So now if we want to understand why those passages are highlighted, you'll see on the left-hand side of my screen, in order of appearance, it's showing me all the things that I told it I cared about. So remember I had said, let's get a motion for summary judgment, or let's get a case talking about that. Here, perfect. This case is obviously talked about a defense motion. Question match, great. These are the answers to that test we're asking about, what are the standards for? And you can just kind of jump through. So we're getting you the answer to your question really fast, but also now moving more into the realm of getting you the perfect case. If that means this is a case that you can send to your client because your client's a large company, they have their own general counsel, it's very sophisticated. So you want to look really great. They ask you a question, 2 minutes later, bam, you flip this to them, you can do that.
Right.
If you're a litigator getting paid on contingency, you're only getting paid if you win. Well, you want to, every minute you spend on legal research, you want it to be spent getting the perfect stuff to put in your brief, right?
Right.
So there's different ways you can use it, but it's very powerful and it's very simple. And what you can also do here is, let's say you're spending a couple hours on Ross, you're finding great stuff, you're finding stuff you never would have found before. In doing all this, you're also coming across concepts of law you're not as familiar with, which is great. It's a great problem to have. That's what we always used to be told, like when our librarian is saying, you're going to get better and better at legal research, and then you're going to start having good problems. Like you're going to find stuff you didn't know existed. So that's going to happen really fast on Ross. The beauty of it, because it's an artificially intelligent system, is you don't need to crack open books all of a sudden to learn about those new ideas. So let me give an example of what I'm blabbing on about here. So we're reading through this case. It looks like there is a section of this case talking about seals, like physical seals, like with a king of England or something, sealing a scroll or a letter. And it is saying in this paragraph here, the common law right of public access to judicial documents is firmly rooted in our nation's history. Without access to those documents, it's impossible for the public to perform their essential role in monitoring judicial proceedings. And therefore, the Second Circuit articulated a three-step process for determining if a document must be placed under seal. Okay, so this to me is the classic, wow, oh my goodness, I didn't even know this requirement of a document under seal existed. What does this mean? But am I being negligent if I don't read this? Because is this something my client needs to worry about? So all we have to do is it's as simple as you just highlight the language you want to learn more about. So click here, it says find similar language. And then what you're going to see pop up is now cases across the country where judges have talked about that idea, but once again, not relying on the exact same words.
Right.
So all sorts of different ways you can use this, right? So one of the most interesting ones off the bat for us was we had practitioners, very, very seasoned practitioners, using Ross for the first time and facing sort of an unusual concept they're not as familiar with. And they would just highlight something quickly and then all of a sudden see that a judge in a different state using different words and maybe applying some very out-of-date law had actually talked about that before. So the first area that would kind of pop up was with real estate law, right? Where you have these very specific wordings. And if you go far enough back, you start having British property law start to actually be important, but the terminology is totally different. The statutes they're referring to are totally different. So this was this tool that would start unearthing stuff that, someone's been doing real estate law for 35 years, but never realized that there actually is a law with respect to conveyancing of property. It's just worded in a different way. You can also have a lot of fun, obviously, using this on opposing counsel's work. So once you get their brief, and I'll show you that in a second, you can kind of just tear it apart if you want to as well. What you can also do is you can jump into different stats and regs. So in terms of the coverage, we have stats and regs for all 50 states and then all federal. We know that often as a researcher, someone asks you a question about a very specific part of statute, right? Criminal code, bankruptcy code, whatever it may be. And it's sort of, how do I interpret this law that was written 70 years ago by a bunch of people that have since passed away, and they wrote it, in a totally different world, a world before the internet, before, right, all this different technology. And all you have to do is, once again, you just jump in and you find language where you want to learn a bit more about it. I'm just clicking through stuff. Oh, here, seals. We can make this a seal themed demo, right? And then all you do here is, once again, you just highlight, click find similar language, and then it'll pull examples of our cases have talked about that as well. So really, really powerful tool. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. And then you can also upload your own docs. So let me give an example.
That's what I was about to ask
quickly.
you, is what the DocSweeney Analyzer was. That looked interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see if I should have some brief. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to upload one right there. Okay. So what it's going to do is, let me backtrack. You can upload any document as long as it's a Word doc or a PDF. There shouldn't be any issues with optical character recognition. Basically means if the doc was scanned or not. So was it prior to being an electronic doc? Was it a physical doc? The one thing that will cause snags is if you upload a doc that is password protected, it is basically going to give you an error message. That's not by accident. That's totally on purpose. We don't want to create a loophole where we're opening sensitive docs that you shouldn't have access to. Not that any of you would do that, of course. But what I'm going to do is I've uploaded a brief as a fun example, but yeah, you can really upload anything. And what it's going to do off the bat, so it'll reproduce the whole doc in here. You'll see I'm just scrolling through. Anytime a case is mentioned, it's going to hyperlink to that. You can open it up inside of ROS. You're going to see on the left-hand side, it's showing me a list of all cases, but also showing me if there was any issues. So if anything was criticized, overturned, that kind of thing.
Right.
So this is really powerful in different ways. So if you get opposing counsel's work, I mean, the easiest and most fun thing to do is upload it and see if they, cited bad law, obviously. But you can do it with your own work. You can also do it with someone else's work. So a few examples of where you can do that. If you work at a firm with a couple different attorneys, or even 100 attorneys, and someone has done some great work but it's out of date, maybe they're not even at the firm anymore, you can upload it, quickly check it. If you wrote the doc, say you put together a brief 3 years ago, pop it in here, it'll immediately let you know if there's any issues. Also, though, what's really, really interesting is you can use that technology we saw before to find similar language on someone else's writing. So let's use this example here. So here's a passage. I'm reading opposing counsel's, brief, let's imagine. And here's a passage where they're kind of leaning on something that I haven't really heard about before. I'm also a little bit skeptical of it. So it says, in upholding that result, this court stressed the inevitable discovery doctrine is closely related to the independent source doctrine. Okay, so hold on, pump the brakes. What does that mean? What are they talking about? Just going to highlight it, click find similar language, and then once again, it's going to be pulling discussion of that idea across the country. You can filter it as much as you want. So sometimes, you say you only want Supreme Court cases or only unpublished cases or whatever you want. You have lots of options.
Right.
So you can do this with opposing counsel's work. That's the obvious one, right? Hold on. That, like that argument has no legs. Highlight it. Oh yeah, see someone in the same state or someone at the Supreme Court disagreed with that. So it's great for that. But you can also do some really interesting stuff that we learned actually from feedback from our users. You could find an article on an emerging area of law. So let's say self-driving cars is an example, or even better, cybersecurity, right? Really, a lot of legal questions about those issues, those subjects, people don't fully know like how the law is going to apply. So what you can do is you find an article that an expert has written on it, and then you download that article, upload it as a PDF, and then where there's sort of discussion of ideas, I don't know. Typically, the test for vicarious liability with motor vehicles involves a 4-part test. So you're like, okay, well, he says typically, what does that mean? So you highlight it, and then once again, you see if judges have agreed or disagreed. So a really, really powerful way to kind of, so to quote our librarian, you stand on the shoulders of giants, right? You find the work that someone who's really smart has already done, upload it in here, and then kind of piggyback off of it. So it's one more way that this can, A, save you a lot of time on research if you just don't want to spend as much time doing it because you can't charge your clients.
Right.
Your client doesn't have the budget for it, or you just have something better to do, right? Like maybe whatever it is, right? There's a million different things
Like
you can
now
do with
people
your
are
time.
working from home, and so they've got to, take care of the homeschooling with the kids.
Exactly.
So they need to work quickly and be more efficient
Yeah.
in the way they're working.
Yeah, you have obligations, that you didn't have before. It can do that. On the flip, I don't know, you work from your home office, you've got no family, and all you do is work and you absolutely love legal research to death. This is still a great tool because your research is going to be much more effective and much more accurate. And because of that AI search, you'll find, and we know this because our customers tell us this all the time, you're going to find cases you literally never would have found on the other tools because the other tools are only looking for the words you typed in.
Right. I could see people really geeking, people like me, I would be geeking out on this and, going down rabbit holes and learning all kinds of stuff. And then I'm like, oh, well, I can't charge all that time. So, but fun. Anything else you want to show us here today before we wrap up?
What I'll do is I'll quickly go to the pricing page once again, just so you see it. So it's not just all coming from my mouth. How simple we keep all this stuff. So, I mean, the title says it all. We just released a new web page, so I actually didn't know I was going to say this. Simple pricing, no hidden fees. So you can do month to month at $89 a month. That's totally
huge.
Unlimited use.
That's huge, because that's one of the complaints of smaller firms is kind of getting locked into contracts and not having the flexibility to make changes and everything. So I like that month to month. That's good.
Yeah, and we hear that all the time in terms of they're locked into them. We hear about there's rate hikes, and there's almost sort of hidden rate hikes. So they'll say, well, it's a fixed fee, but over the last 6 months you did use it a lot. So I don't know, we're adding an admin charge of 30%. You're never going to see that with us. So we started out doing just monthly because we wanted to make clear that we were totally above board. What folks ended up asking for was quarterly and annually. So you'll see here, quarterly is actually the most popular, and then annually. So those both give even steeper discounts. Also, we are, and we're actually really proud of this because it's sort of a historic event. We are an official member benefit of a number of state bars. So the first state bar was actually Florida, which was really, really cool.
Florida.
And they're obviously, yay, Florida, there you go. And they do a great job, right?
Excellent.
Yeah, I thought you would like that. So we're with them, we're with Illinois, we're with Minnesota, and then there's a number of additional ones that are going to be announced. So really cool for us because it's a special moment when something like artificial intelligence is really properly endorsed by state bars, right? Because they really are a resource for attorneys. B, it means that if you live in those states and you log into your member benefit portal, you actually get a discount if you sign up for Ross. So it's going to be even more affordable than the prices you see here. But the best part is you can still use it for 14 days, totally unlimited use, completely for free. You don't even have to put down a credit card. So we really encourage people to just jump in, use it. If you do end up needing a few more days, just let us know. Totally fine. We know how busy attorneys are. We know how client stuff pops up all the time. Real life pops up all the time. But we just really encourage folks to jump on, use it, and you will right away see the difference.
Awesome. So you guys have a partnership with Fastcase. Tell me about that, because I know that's a benefit to a lot of different. I know in Florida it's a benefit. To have Fastcase.
And actually the states that we are official member benefits of for the state bars are actually all Fastcase states, and that's not a coincidence. Remember, I was saying that we really view ourselves as a complement to the other tools. Fastcase feels the same way. So part of us sort of being welcomed by the Florida State Bar, Illinois, Minnesota, and a number more to follow that are Fastcase states was conversations with us, but also with Fastcase leadership. And the reason that works is that our executive team works very closely with Fastcase's executive team. I was actually at ABA Tech Show in end of February this year, and I was on the AI panel, and the two members of the AI panel were myself, on the VP Strategy and Operations at Ross, and then Damien, who is the Managing Director of Fastcase. And it was basically us talking about where AI is going, but also our vision of it from our two companies' points of view. And our companies now are developing software together in tandem that both our users and Fastcase users will get to use. So there's a lot of really, really cool stuff coming down the pipe. And I would actually add to that, one other company we work very closely with is Clio, who is a huge company. I'm sure a number of your listeners use them. So their CEO and founder is actually on our board of directors. So we have a direct Clio integration. So you can use some of Ross for free, unlimited on Clio as long as you want. If you do sign up and ultimately become a paying member, you get a discount. And keep your eyes posted for more cool stuff to come. We also put on events, not currently because of the shutdown, but events side by side and virtual events with the Clio team. So we work very closely with both of those companies and their executive leadership team.
Oh, nice. Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for sharing this. You can probably take us off unshare for a minute, and we'll just
yeah, sure thing.
Wrap up a little bit.
See if I can. Can I pass it
if you
back
put it,
to
yeah,
you?
if you put it at the bottom of the video screen that we are on, so our little video screen there at the top, or wherever you moved us to, wherever you move you and I to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able, right up at the top there. Let's see, at the very top, you see a bar pop up. Let me see if I
Yeah,
can
the
just take.
black horizontal bar.
Yeah, let me
Oh,
see.
pause share. I think that
Yeah.
pauses me. And then if you just want to share yours, I think
Yeah,
that'll work.
I think you just stop sharing. You just stop sharing.
There we go.
There you go.
Yep.
And now we're back. And we're back. So, yay. Well, thanks so much for sharing this. It was really informative and interesting. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who are, looking for alternatives and probably are going to be very excited to, and also ways to improve their efficiency. It's a huge issue, for smaller firms, particularly, always looking for, well, actually any size firm, I imagine, always looking for ways to improve efficiency and get the research that you need that's on point, that's going to be winning research for you, without spending days doing it, hours and days doing it.
Yeah.
And not every firm can hire research assistants to sit in there and do this. So finding ways, I love when you and I first talked on the podcast, you were talking about, it's kind of like having, when you have a small firm or a solo firm, you don't have those other attorneys down the hall that you can talk with about a case and run things by. And you said Ross is kind of like a virtual research assistant in a way that you can sort of take all these ideas you have in your head and put it in here and see, does this have merit? Can I find anything on this? So exciting, good stuff. Thanks for sharing. So we know how to find you. We just Google Ross Intelligence. You showed us how to do that.
That's right.
And awesome. So if anybody has any questions, can they reach out to you, or is there somebody that they can reach out to, or should they just go right into the website and set up a time to talk with somebody or something like that?
Yeah, I would say just go right to the website, sign up for your trial. And then on the website, you're going to see in a bunch of different places, you have the option to book a demo. And then different attorneys on our team will take turns giving those demos. So it's a way for us to always sort of understand, how do folks interact with their technology, hear the questions they have about it. So for that, you're just able to schedule a 30-minute demo based around the availability of our team.
Yeah,
and you can do that
you said
before
that
you
your
set up
team
for
is made up
trial
of
or after.
attorneys. So they have attorneys who understand what it is to do legal research. It's not somebody who doesn't really understand what that is. So that's awesome. All right, terrific. Well, thanks so much for being here today. I've enjoyed it. And I'm sure I'll be in touch with you soon. Thanks.